And then we can continue. Perfect. Welcome, everyone. This is Younergy Crypto School's second module, Regenerative Finance. A bit of a background maybe to Younergy as a solar, as a service business from Switzerland scaling into Europe. And they're also looking for alternative finance, specifically digital first, Web3 native finance that can scale as fast and in a similar fashion, namely distributed, like the Younergy solar business does. So we are looking at regenerative finance, of course, from two main perspectives: solar, as well as Web3 decentralized finance, and this new, I would even say spin, because we've been in this space since 2017, and earlier it was sustainability and blockchain, but ReFi is really looking at how can we take the DeFi, decentralized finance primitives, and make use of them for regenerative finance, for making finance work for regeneration and not just for maximizing profits. A bit to our background, again, for those of you who might be joining today for the first time and did not meet the Web3 basic sessions or skipped it, you can have the recording in the discourse. We are from the Younergy Crypto Community that is currently forming, and Younergy Crypto School is one way to cultivate that community. I call myself chief activist at Younergy Crypto because that is basically what we're currently doing. We're sharing what we know. We help people to understand the mechanics, the new way of doing things in a decentralized fashion. My background is computer science and a bit of economics, but I only got into economics when I entered Web3. So complexity economics and so on. These are the things, anything that is programmable for simulations, these are the things that really get me going. But my applied research experience has been in Siemens, in decentralized energy, smart grid since 2008. So that's what I bring in. And also from the solar perspective, I am also representing Younergy and helping them to scale in Germany. So all in all, also behind the ecosystem architecture, who are we connecting? How are we bootstrapping these connections first in the ecosystem? Which chains are we going for, and so on, as well as the token model generation. Yes, so Paula, if you also share a bit of your background and your perspective onto Younergy Crypto, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, hello, I'm Paula. I'm sitting here at Younergy Portugal.
Yay.
Nice coincidence. And yeah, my background is actually fashion design and 3D design, and I discovered Web3 also during research on sustainability and sustainable fashion. And this is also kind of where Sebnem and I met by building communities and ecosystem actually. And yeah, also my research bring me to ReFi and to the question, how can we actually make also the fashion industry more sustainable through regenerative finance. And yeah, for Younergy Crypto, I'm a supporter and learner, and try to make this grow as much as possible, and also a more let's say intriguing, recently working on some fun solar merch that we can share later. Yeah, but also if anyone has questions, I try to moderate here. And
wonderful.
Yes.
Good, and we are seeing each other tomorrow already in Porto, and we're going to be visiting to some solar sites especially a textile production facility that has Younergy solar rooftop being operated and owned by it. So, and also ETH Porto is there. So one big focus is also cultivating local communities and connecting with local communities who want to learn more and get more active in this decentralized finance future. So regenerative finance, this module is actually thought for people who are already into DeFi or have dabbled in DeFi, know their way around in decentralized exchanges, but are not yet in ReFi. However, through this course and exchanges with participants, we also saw actually ReFi is a first stop for many who understand that this new way of programming values and transacting them over the internet actually can help in rewiring value flows, creating new business models that are beyond profit, that are for purpose and regeneration. So again, it's this session will go into first introductory level, like what are voluntary carbon markets and what do those markets need to have the trust level, namely measuring, reporting, and verification. These are concepts and methodologies that come from traditional world and from the 2000s. I'll go into that. And already through crypto and through the connection to crypto, their traditional drawbacks have become very obvious. I mean, it was known to insiders, but now it really is obvious that first of all, we need digital methodologies for measurement, reporting, verification. And then also in order for scale and for, not creating monopolies, we need these MRV solutions also to be distributed and open. I will give examples already that we see burgeoning in Web3. And at next, we will go into, you will see from the examples, it's all about forests. So we will go into, okay, what is the carbon value of solar and how do we tokenize that and what methodologies, if any, exist and how does Younergy Crypto calculate the carbon emissions that are avoided when we have solar power actually replacing effectively fossil fuel power wherever it is deployed. And last but not least, we will look at the state of the art of crypto carbon pools and protocols. Again, if you're not into DeFi, if you're really new, then for that, you will need the Web3 basics session. We have the recording from the season. Definitely recommend going back to that to fully appreciate also what is the current state of the art, and maybe even also start imagining what is possible with these level of programmable exchanges. Good. A quick hat tip to Younergy Crypto's own learning ecosystem. Kernel community is a really beautiful collective of individuals and also Web3 native organizations that explore the way of Web3. And I come from a philosophical perspective, but also very hands-on. It's a learning community as well. And we look at how to joyfully subvert the status quo. Both Paula and I are kernel fellows. Then ReFi DAO is a relatively new, but nonetheless very interesting community where we learn a lot about regeneration, also about new culture that we have and need. It's a founder-led Web3 regenerator. So not an accelerator. So the quality of how value is created plays a big role in that organization. Last but not least, token engineering commons, where I spent a lot of efforts also in the years 2020 until 2021, last year even, where it's all about bringing the expertise and funds together to enable the sustainable and ethical design for token ecosystems in Web3. So it's, as you can see, really a good combination. And also, as you can see, there are a lot of already experience sharing, learning opportunities in Web3 and also support system. And Younergy Crypto aims to be one such learning community in Solar and Web3, first and foremost. So we, after the first season of Younergy Crypto School, we're going to continue with community calls. So you are most welcome to join. And they will be almost every Wednesday, 5 p.m. CET. And sometimes we will have open sessions where we also invite collaborators and people we want to collaborate with or learn from or create something together with respect to these solutions of funding more solar, but also how these tokens actually can be added in other token ecosystems. On the 22nd March, we have open engineering. We will look into the smart contracts, logic, and the audits with our long-term collaborators, Magic Powered, and the smart contract auditors, Verilog Solutions, which we enjoyed working with a lot. 29th March, we will have another open engineering where we look into data modeling. So the tip of the iceberg we showed today, we will go deeper into the whole data modeling side for solar power production, but also CO2 emissions avoidance. How do we calculate that? How can that be community validated? We will go much deeper into that on 29th, and also the version 1 token model simulations with Block Science Labs. 5th of April, again, open ecosystems with Prime DAO. I'm really looking forward to that because that is the part that's also new to me. That we now have the capability to let communities emerge and let them also connect organically, meaning through tokens and exchanges with other DAOs. So that's super interesting. Yes, and of course, token model workshops that are still in planning. Definitely follow Younergy Crypto on Twitter or subscribe to the newsletter if you want to get invites to those. We will have definitely more. If you were in the Web3 Basics session, you will remember this. So today, we will go into mostly the data part and also, of course, the solar part. So these special purpose entities that are managing solar rooftops or owning and operating them. These are the solar asset managers in the community. They provide the solar power data. We also take in data from other sources, public sources that show us the carbon intensity of the power mix locally. And that's how we calculate, for example, the CO2 emissions avoided. That will be the topic of today. But then again, the whole data modeling session, we will dig deeper on the 29th. And to the right in the Web3 Basics session, what's in a token? We went a bit into the token models today. It will be more on the application level. But if you really want to dig deeper, as mentioned, 22nd, we'll go into the logic and audits. And 29th, we'll go into the token model of Younergy Crypto. Today, again, it will be more on the level of regenerative finance, the ecosystem, and like what is the current state of the art in the traditional world and what is happening in the crypto carbon ecosystem. Let's dive in if you don't have any questions thus far or any comments. If you wanted us to look into something deeper, feel free to also just write it. Else, let's get into first voluntary carbon markets, and then at the second level, what is needed for those, namely transparent measurement, reporting, and verification. So for the understanding of voluntary carbon markets, let's look at what incumbents, but also new players in this domain, like the European Energy Exchange says. The common understanding is to reach net zero goal, companies do not only need to decarbonize, but also what they cannot avoid or reduce, those emissions need to be offset. They need to be compensated. For that, the EEX says we need robust, trustful, and secure markets. Yes, and that they also say that the carbon credits are emitted by projects that actually cause the CO2 avoidance, removal, or reduction on the ground. There are two carbon markets, broadly divided into compliance or regulated markets. Those are basically national level and regulated on national or local, but definitely or European levels. There are other types of regulations like taxes. And the voluntary markets is really driven by corporates or individuals who wish to offset their emissions, and they buy directly or through voluntary carbon markets credits from the projects, basically. Now, the past 20 years or more, we've seen a lot of greenwashing, and even in 2022, 2023, still this is the main main critique with the current methods being used. The carbon credits being not high quality, meaning they don't show whether there are really incentives that create additional carbon emissions avoidance or removal. And also because they are so cheap, they are mostly used for greenwashing, meaning organizations that just want to sound as if they were not polluting whilst they do their businesses in polluting ways, or even in the first place create pollution. So, but again, this is a method, and if we, especially through Web3, adding the transparency and programmability, and especially through token engineering, which is basically incentive mechanism design, we can ask ourselves, okay, can we look at this and see the rabbit, which is, can we create incentive schemes and mechanisms to avoid and reduce carbon emissions first, and then to even incentivize to go greener by offsetting what was unavoidable. And surprise, Younergy Crypto is or has become exactly that. And I want to emphasize this opportunity is a given just because we tokenize the carbon value of the solar rooftops. We started initially really from the perspective Younergy, we want to put more solar onto more commercial and industrial rooftops. So we want to have a community that helps fund those solar rooftops. And as rewards, we decided that the community has then a revenue share from the solar asset managers, but also because else we could do just crowdfunding, right? But through tokenization, we could also provide the community with carbon credits from those solar rooftops that are newly funded. And just by having this YCO2 token that represents, we immediately saw, because we wanted to test it and we put in existing solar projects, and then all of a sudden, hey, wait a second, we can actually sell the carbon value of existing solar to fund new solar. So literally by having these 3 smart contracts that we have and tokenizing the carbon value, tokenizing the revenue share logic, and automating, we all of a sudden could rewire the value flow. And we do this not by any special means. It's really, everything is ERC standards. And we use a Gnosis chain, which is a distributed ledger technology per example. And it's all permissionless, it's voluntary markets. So that's why, value creators can directly offer that value on chain, and offsetters can directly buy from in the form of tokens. So that reminds me of what, when I read it for the first time in 2017, it was like mind-blowing. You can Google that if I didn't connect it. But it was a tweet storm from Naval, and everyone was just making sense of blockchains and what that means. And he said, blockchains will replace networks with markets. I mean, I don't believe in this whole replace thing, but definitely the case in point is when you have a value network, you automatically, when you tokenize that value, or use smart contracts and transact that value on chain, you create markets with 0 marginal cost. And that's the innovation potential of crypto. Now, having said that, still we need to determine what 1 ton of carbon is worth. Not emitting it or removing it. And there are, as mentioned, these mandatory and compliance markets. Because they're so highly regulated, the trust level is much higher, and the prices are much higher. Nonetheless, they differ a lot. In Europe, we're finally reaching some meaningful levels, like 70, 80 euros. But in California, the regional carbon markets also exist. In US and in California, you have around 20 or 30 USDs and so on. And on the voluntary carbon market, I don't know, as mentioned, I didn't know, but still today the methodologies are not digital, and hence the transparency and pricing isn't as fast as it could be if it was digital and if it was on chain. So that's why the prices are around 2-3 euros. And the issue is that we also see those now on the crypto carbon pools. We get to that later, why that is. But this is state of the art. It didn't change much in the past 20 years or so. These highly regulated markets improved a lot. However, for regular solar installers who are small scale and highly distributed, these markets are not available. That's why you don't see solar carbon value on those markets. So how did we decide to go about it? Again, we started with an MVP, minimally viable product, so we can have this tests and exchanges and test logic, but also reach out to potential users and offsetters and get the conversation started. So we used the YCO2 NFT contracts to create a limited edition of carbon value from 57 UK projects. And we chose UK because there we always have a high granularity solar power data, production data. But in UK, we also had from the grid operator published data that is 30-minute granularity looking into how dirty or how clean currently at any point in time and location the power mix is. So that's why we chose these projects to do the MVP with the limited edition YCo2, and there also to have these A/B tests we used for where we have the high granular data, meaning 30 minutes, high resolutions into the CO2 emissions avoided. There we demand 125 XDI from participants. And if you choose less granular data, meaning, you know, we only have from 2017 on this UK data that is high granular, and before that we need to take the yearly yearly carbon intensity data of UK. That is another typical way to go around. Then the granularity of the data used is not that high, of course. So you have this average carbon intensity over a year, but you would still have how much solar was produced during that time that you offset. And you know, what is it? What is more worth? And we already see if people are presented with these two options, they rather go for the more granular. The other thing that we do with these limited editions, we do many things with these limited editions, but one other thing is to also create an awareness campaign. So the campaign is called 100x Die Now, because on average, we need the carbon ton to cost at least $100 right away to actually have an effect on helping us reach net zero emissions by 2050. So that's definitely the campaign side of things. So it's limited edition. And also this is how we are identifying value aligned offsetters, right? And then also this is what we add when we reach our milestones from these revenues. We will also share back when we fund more solar with these initial public offsetters. And that is exactly what voluntary carbon market is. There is a provider of carbon value, especially the Web3 way. Everything is open and verifiable and shared. And it is the choice of the participant, right? We create additional incentive mechanisms like airdropping YC tokens that represents that revenues went into funding more solar, that we airdrop those to the initial offsetters who were also our initial supporters, right? Who were the value aligned participants who wanted to signal that 1 carbon ton, if it costs $1 or $3, it doesn't matter. It has to cost 100 XI to have a signal. We are the signalers. Anyways, so the YCo2 credits, the token smart contract is verified and deployed on Gnosis chain. We are also through with our security audits with all of the 3 smart contracts. So again, the deployment is near, and on the 22nd, come by to the open engineering session in the community call. Then you will really see what is it that we have in these contracts, what is it that you're participating in, and so on. So in my view, and also in the token engineering ethical principles, this is the way to go, right? Make informed participation possible, but then also have informed participants really become activators of the value network. That's Web3 way. That's the Web3 way. Good. Any questions right now? Like, now we're getting back to the traditional world. Measurement, reporting, verification. How we do it, we'll explain again later, but just quickly, you heard that it's all data-driven. It's all digital, what we do. However, what you hear in the news, and also how current traditional carbon markets work, is not digital. Like, they have websites and they upload documents and so on, but it's all still manual processes, and it's paper-based. Even if you put it in a PDF, it's paper. It's digital paper. So, and interestingly, again, it started in the 2000s. It has been created on the level of multinationals, UN, and so on. It's really for tracking climate finance flows globally, and then also tracking whether those funds go into actual projects to create the actual impact continuously, right? So, and the systems that they came up with in the past 20 years, again, are systems that are complex and require many steps that are manual, digitalized, but not digital. And all the rationale behind is how to get from emissions reduced on the ground, right, to show that to offsetters so that they buy in, and how to make sure that those payments go back into the hands of the project providers, or the carbon value providers. That's it. So if you just remember this as the requirement, because everything else, the complexity that has grown on these institutions in the past 20 years, that doesn't bother new players at all that are digital first. So that's really important takeaway. Then here we have a really good link. I do recommend that article. Also, it has links to the big 4 carbon standards. It shows how, whereas the biggest, representing 83% of the total issued certificates in 2021 and so on, and how gold standard issued 44 million. And I think when the crypto carbon protocol started, they issued, around, no, they didn't issue, they retired around 20 million. So these are just numbers, but I also liked the article's question: where do carbon standards get their license to operate? Like, who puts them in charge? And the short answer, they get the legitimacy from key buyers. So that's what voluntary markets is. That's why measurement, reporting, verification is important, because there is this requirement to prove that the funds go back to value creators, and that they have then the potential to create additional credits. So just recently, there were a lot of critiques also with the best methodologies that Vera has. Vera has also issued a response and so on. So there is this back and forth, but definitely it's very clear that compared to what we can do in the 21st century, the possibilities of established institutions to facilitate this carbon value exchange is very limited and questionable. That's because, as mentioned, the incumbents dMRV solutions are not even digital. So there was this whole Vera crypto connection in the spring of 2022, and only at the end of the year, basically, the publications came out. Okay, we are going to start with digital measuring pilots and so on. Gold Standard started even a pilot in tokenizations with IOTA and Google. So these are links you can follow. But just to give you an idea that actually this whole crypto carbon movement, no matter how dramatic it was, really pushed and also showed the weaknesses and the issues with the traditional institutions and solutions. So definitely that was important. That, however, we cannot just stop there or wait for incumbents to get digital. I mean, I left Siemens in 2017 for a reason. It takes a long time. And we can do faster and better. And it's actually, if we can, it's our obligation to do so. Now, this digital distributed MRV, dMRV, again, it's not just digital processes, but also distributed processes. Why? Because we don't just want to trust one actor who is going to become the monopolist, but actually create a much more open source, distributed way to do so. And we don't just trust, but validate as participants in these Web3 value networks. Now, a lot of Web3 native coalitions are forming. And Demeter, again, the link here, is one such player or coalition that has formed. MRV Collective is another. The documents and the thought leadership that they're providing is really good, clear. It's really clear what needs to be done if you're digital first or digital native. Again, digital is a given. You see here data collection, if it's about nature preserving, satellite images, but also IoT devices. In our case with solar, smart meters are the norm. But also what is interesting is this human sensing. In Web3, it's very clear for us. It's not just the agents that we program, but also the human actors in the same value network that need incentives and so on. So data collection looks into those parts. Then we have the analysis part, is about data cleaning and indexing and algorithms. Again, we don't need one actor to do everything, but looking into creating open source and open processes that can be looked into, participated, validated independently, algorithms offered independently, and so on. The third level is domain specialist. I'm in Younergy. We are solar. We breathe solar. So coming from that aspect, you have then the domain specialists that look into one domain, open forest protocol. The name of it says, and digs deep into open forest. Then there are others like Collectivo that go into actual livelihood of the communities as well, like the regeneration aspect or ReFi aspect in this movement is way more sophisticated than just accounting carbon. That's true. However, also all these new movements have 180-degree focus on beyond carbon, what else can we actually measure, which is great, like the ecosystem services, biodiversity, soil quality. I feel like we don't, we cope with complexity consciously and don't just reduce it into minimalist or simplistic ways. That's important. Again, digital data collection, distributed infrastructure, MRV methodologies actually coming from domain experts that work with these distributed infrastructure providers. And the Web3 way of it is really about how do we also distribute the validation, so we don't have one body certifying or things like that. Another link I provide at the end, it's a new publication I just learned about today as well. It's from the Crypto Sustainability Coalition with the World Economic Forum. And in that coalition, there is a blockchain carbon credits working group that has just published these recommendations. We also tweeted a thread at Younergy Crypto. You can read the highlights there as well. So let's go into some examples, shall we? This one, Fund the Planet, I met them here in Munich. It's really cool. And I love the app that they, like the MVP that they created is, you know, actually more than an MVP. And they're also on chain since 2021. So, you know, quite experienced and also experienced in the field. They did many visits already to the communities that they're supporting in the Amazonas, and all of that, including the community of the Fund the Planet, are the preservers of regions and pieces of the rainforest and that they have acquired. The Explorer is linked, is really nice. You can browse, there's a lot of information. You can click and read, and you already see the difference and the interaction, the difference of available information. And you can also see how once this becomes, you know, used mainstream, how much more real time it will get. Again, thinking about the social layer of it is super interesting. As well, what they do for verification is they use just a third-party service that is also just a web service. It's called GF Global Forest Watch, globalforestwatch.org, I think, which has maps, global maps and data on forest. They also have reviews and so on. So here you see how open APIs and web services are being connected, and that being taken as the source of data that goes then into the NFTs. And the rainforest tokens, the RFTs, represent really areas. And this is what you can buy. And from the proceeds of these sales, also from the trading, a certain percentage goes to actual operators and the community on the ground. Initial prices, again, the question is also, okay, what does it cost, right? Here you see what costs go into, also into the purchasing the land and maintenance or keeping communications alive, the community connected. All of that has a cost. And the initial prices of these NFTs that are just sold on OpenSea. So again, MVP-like, no need to create another marketplace. But you can buy these on OpenSea, which is an NFT marketplace. And the interesting tidbit here is just that the prices of these tokens, as the issuers say, depend on the area size, because it's backed by actual rainforest land. And the logic is not that, oh, you own this piece of land. No, you own the impact that you create by actually preserving that piece of land that is really acquired by Fund the Planet. Again, it's always good to ask what could go wrong, and then also view the project from that side. If we participate in this project, it's our power and obligation as participants to ask questions and also to help come up with answers. For example, we don't want the rainforest being actually acquired by people not living there, right? Actually, like, what is going to be the future relation between people who live there and people who want to have the impact, right, of preserving. What kind of relationships are we building? And definitely not the old colonial ways. So this is important. I'm just adding this because I'm a big fan and definitely want to participate in this as well. So again, going back to the like we can see from the planet is domain specialist, like they say, which they come up with. This is the way we would measure and make data available. This is how we tokenize. And then again, the participants decide, is it good enough? Then I participate. If not, I may give feedback, and those improvements may, and the incentives that the protocol comes with may, you know, speak to me. So I do become an active participant. That's the Web3 way to think of voluntary carbon markets. Now, Ocean Protocol, if you haven't heard of it yet, is already started in 2017, the first, or my wave, that brought people like me into Web3 in 2017. And it's a protocol for data, exchanging data and exchanging algorithms even, or the outcome of algorithms. So it's super interesting. It's a rather complex project, but they are definitely, and you've seen it, they're mentioned in the infrastructure and data part. So when we think about, again, setting prices, what goes into those tokens is also the data, right? We could also think about, okay, how does Ocean Protocol does the pricing mechanism? And definitely, if you're into Web3 and learning more, definitely also check out Ocean Academy. Their explanations of DeFi primitives and how they are used on data value is quite interesting as well. Now, what they say is you can have fixed pricing, set your price for the data, like what we do with the MVP or the A/B test with the YCo2 token is also that. We set the price fixed and that's it. The dynamic pricing that they suggest here, it's using DeFi protocols or mechanisms derived from DeFi with liquidity pools. Again, Web3 basics, we explained a bit. That's how you start with a base price, and the market organically discovers, because the data token that they came up with, I think in version 3, can be exchanged so that traders or exchangers discover the right price for your data. Again, I would say this is a hypothesis, right? It still needs to be shown that trading can discover prices. In the crypto carbon ecosystem, we see that there is struggle. The one argument as well, the struggle is because the carbon credits are low quality, and that's why they have this low price. Again, the other could be that the traders will never have enough incentives to actually discover the right price. Carbon credit must have to actually create incentives to go green through pure trading. We're not through with that discussion yet. So this is about pricing, some some avenues to look into. Now, another example is Open Forest Protocol, and again, they were mentioned in the domain specialist region because they look into forest. But the aspect that I want to highlight of Open Forest Protocol is actually the distributed validation aspect. So they don't just not only assume that all data comes from decentralized sources, but also they assume the validation of that data will be done by distributed agents by parties, validators participating in the open forest protocol. So here is just a quick overview that validators confirm the data uploaded, or they challenge the data that is uploaded. And if their challenge is valid, or the confirmation is valid, so no other challenges the validator and is right, that those validators earn a fee because they provide the service to the protocol. Good. The sources link, definitely look into it. I will need to pace. Again, the ReFi module is packed, and when we do the season 2 with new hosts and designers, the first thing that we will do is find a better format to share these insights and also update these insights together with the community, right? So let's get into the part that is interesting for Younergy Crypto Community, but also interesting to ask, like, okay, we heard a lot about, you know, forests and so on, but what about actually getting rid of the fossil fuel power sources or replacing them with renewables like solar to actually take care that CO2 is not emitted, right, from and from this aspect, again, spoiler, there are no standards for solar carbon value in the traditional world. And because it turned out that all crypto protocols looked at what are the incumbents doing, we don't have solar carbon value, not even in the new DeFi or ReFi world. Again, I do believe that this is definitely a clean slate. It's where we should be starting anyways. And so we can actually choose the simplest method that satisfies that initial requirement of actually proving that the revenues from your offset, right, reach the value creators on the ground, in our case, the solar rooftop installers and energy consumers. Now, the reason that there is no VCS, no voluntary carbon standard for solar is because in 2019, the monopolist Vera and the second one, gold standard, so basically they are the market, they decided that the dramatic fall in the cost of renewable energy technologies you know, doesn't or makes it so that these technologies should not be included. They don't need the carbon value or the revenues from offsets to actually make these solutions scale. Now that's their version, but if you're in the renewable energy business, especially in the solar business, you have this experience numbers that dramatic fall actually between 2010 and now caused this green line. Yes, it is an upward trend, but if we actually want to reach net zero, just a portion from solar has to have this exponential increase. So we need that type of funding. And so the financial hurdles is the biggest barrier to achieve net zero targets, to finance the energy transition that is needed. Again, you know, two different domains, two different versions of reality. And again, in the very first sessions, I had no clue why that is. I was a bit shocked, I must say. But from the research further and further, I think it is really hard for Vera and others who are not digital first to actually reliably say what is the carbon emissions avoided from electricity or from the CO2 emissions from electricity. I have linked the research here that basically says annual average accounting can over or underestimate carbon inventories as much as 35%. So that's a lot. For a certifier that isn't digital first, it's impossible. And just using these annual averages, what was their standard before, obviously was causing problems of accuracy. And I guess that's why it was like, okay, we have to drop that. Again, it's just guessing, because I also realized that the information that is provided is always very political. And that's an issue with the traditional world. Like, how can you improve if you're not saying what's wrong? Or how can you find innovators if you're not talking about what needs improvement and innovation? Again, we don't do that in the Web3 world. It's really in crypto, it's do, act, measure, see what's wrong, improve, plan, and do it again. Now, there is one instrument in the traditional world. It's called renewable energy certificates. And it is very simple. One REC equals 1 megawatt hour of electricity from renewable energy sources, solar, hydro, wind, doesn't matter. Now, these RECs, they depend a lot on local regulations. In Germany, that market never took off because it's just too costly regulated. Again, for solar players, which are small scale and highly distributed, it doesn't pay off to participate in this highly regulated. And again, regulation means always there is at least one intermediary that needs to make a business. So there's a lot of costs for participation, such that that regulation or that body is accounted for. Nonetheless, or because of that, digital REC platforms and protocols are emerging. In the 2017 wave that I mentioned, we had this also with Energy Web Foundation. EW0 was one. FlexiDAO is definitely they're not a DAO, I don't know, but FlexiDAO is definitely a player that already, you know, works with companies and offers REC, for example, also flexibility services. IBM had an announcement, but nothing came out of it. And there is Renium, a new player also in this wave that offers a platform for digital RECs. Now, again, from the research and our experience, what about RECs? That question really depends on the incentives that it creates from the offer. So it definitely, RECs are not okay if it incentivizes greenwashing of fossil fuel power producers. Literally, those producers sell fossil fuel power and buy cheap RECs that's greenwashing per se. So power producers should not be able to buy those RECs, in my opinion, or in the common sense perspective. RECs create detrimental or are detrimental if they incentivize multinationals to do price hedging solely. So they rather do trading in RECs and collecting RECs today because it's cheaper than buying electricity from renewable energy sources now until the next 10-15 years. So that's an issue. Like, it's exactly what we do with putting solar on commercial and industrial rooftops, is we enable them to consume clean electricity from their own rooftops instead of doing any other alternative. So that's what we want to incentivize also with Younergy Crypto. So that's why RECs are uninteresting. From Younergy Crypto's perspective. And there is one last bit, again, as a computer scientist or systems engineer, that is totally important, is that 1 megawatt hour of solar actually does not have the same environmental or social value everywhere. So this equation, 1 REC, 1 megawatt hour, is way too simple, reductionist, as to have any true incentives on the ground. Now, solar carbon value, on the other hand, is distinctly accountable, as we are showing with the limited edition, where we have 30-minute data also into the carbon intensity, but elsewhere we will have 60-minute data. So we can show the CO2 emissions avoided at a certain location, at a certain time, and that's what you're offsetting, right? That's what you're using as a credit, and that is traceable on chain. And if we have digital parties on both sides, also the offsetters are digital, then we can actually do real-time matching without, again, zero marginal cost innovation is that. Here is the example visualized. This is the data that we're using. At worst, we will have 60-minute carbon intensity data. In most of Europe, is the data is available. And you see in UK is actually pretty green because they have a lot of wind. France just looks green because there's a lot of nuclear power, but we just don't know what to do with the waste. Actually, the cost should be infinite, right? But if you just look at the carbon value, it looks very green. Now, and the Iberia pool that we go for, we start with Portugal first, where Younergy Crypto will fund the first solar rooftops, then going to the Spain installations, again, where Younergy is already at. And the second pool after Iberia will be the Europe pool. And there you already see that the YC or Europa pool will have much higher environmental impact, because those places in Eastern, also Germany is a big coal producer and then consumer. In those places, the environmental impact of solar power is much higher than it is, for example, in UK. Now, this is exactly why we can capture this unique solar carbon value. And when you mint the YCo2 credits directly to offset in your wallet, you get this certificate of the environmental impact of solar. Again, this is just a start, and for incentive mechanisms, getting down to 1 hourly insights into reduction of CO2 emissions, even higher resolution, that's the level where we want to create new incentives and rewire value flows, right? Connecting values, again, actually, this is how, well, that Electra Seed Fund was the initial project and proof of concept that we went for and had funding and partners, Africa Green Tech in Mali and SoulShare in Bangladesh, and here in Munich. So that was the proof of concept, with which we showed that this pooling paradigm of DeFi can be used to de-risk clean energy access projects in Global South that have a much higher social impact, but initially have a higher risk because of initial defaults of payment. But if you pool them with projects in Europe, for example, then we have this natural de-risking. minimize risk and maximize the positive impact that a 45 kilowatt peak can have. Now, I mean, we're definitely going to go there. So electricity pool is the North Star. But as you also see, the issue to be able to bootstrap it was that we didn't have the data yet to actually make this case. So again, Younergy Crypto goes down to what is practically deployable, implementable, and offerable today using these technologies. Filecoin Green's CO2 storage is also super interesting, and we will definitely have a community call with them, also how we use it and what is the intention behind. Because Filecoin actually, they're not new to this space either. They had started developing already solutions, REC solutions with Energy Web Foundation. Also, they collaborate with Renium. So RECs are interesting, but still they kickstarted this CO2.storage to actually increase the verifiability and interoperability between different systems of carbon credits. So it's quite interesting talk that we have with them also, why not REC, and how we're going to use the CO2.storage, which is basically a repository for collecting schemas. Like we are going to deploy or share the schema of the YCO2 credits. And that's how innovation happens, getting feedback, improvements, and then also it's a useful, simple standard, so it becomes a de facto standard, or we improve it all together for it to become a de facto standard. That's a possibility with Filecoin Green's CO2 storage initiative. Again, it's based, or the assets are stored on IPFS. That was our natural choice as well with the YCO2. So that's why that's definitely going to be a community call topic. Just briefly, again, the method is very straightforward. I have explained it already, mentioned it many times. We have the solar production data from the solar assets under management, right? And we have access to data on carbon intensity of local grid, and we can match hourly, at worst hourly, the CO2 avoidance. And that is actually from another partner. That method was developed by not-for-profit Energy Unlocked for the Carbon Flex project in UK. And in the Carbon Flex project, it was about this hidden carbon economy in end of 2021. And how, again, Energy Unlocked and their actual offering now, YoYu, it can be used to incentivize more efficient use of available clean energy. So assuming there is solar, wind, and so on at certain points, more than at other times in the grid, then with YoYu, you can actually shift your consumption towards those areas, or you can change your behavior as consumers. Again, fantastic. So definitely also partners of Younergy and Younergy Crypto, because that's the way to go, to use, number one, put solar on it, and then do everything you can to use that available solar more efficiently. And now that we have the method, how do we use it? Where do we get the data? And then where do we apply it? Again, more like open forest protocol, it's important that we open this up and the community validation. How do we do it? Through a collaboration with Block Science Labs. It's a data hub for analysis and model representation, where data scientists can dock on, in our case also data artists can dock on. So that's Block Science Labs, the app, the platform that we're using together, and also collaborating on how to improve their solution to actually really become a solution in the space of ReFi and dMRV. Now, again, from right to left, so that you can follow. Number one is data input, is Younergy. This is the software as a service solution of Younergy. It's been developed since 2015. And it's also has potential for open APIs and all that digital jazz, which is already standard. There we get the solar power production data, also consumption data. We could have it 5-minute, daily, monthly per rooftop. But we're always pooling it also on YC.finance. Now the data comes in on solar power production, then we integrate other APIs. For UK projects, we integrated api.carbonintensity.org UK. That is the data provided by National Grid in UK, and you see to the right that you have 30-minute insights on the current carbon intensity of UK power grid, meaning here we know at this point the intensity is 177 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. That means every kilowatt hour of solar consumed there replaces or avoids that much CO2. That's how we calculate the CO2 avoided. And the actual data validation, plausibilization, and so on happens on this data hub analysis and model presentation of Block Science Labs. Also, we will have more open sessions with Block Science Labs, public reports. We will have the all communication and exchange, value exchange with data scientists, data artists, and token engineers will happen through that platform or that solution. Here you see us looking at typical errors that we see in the data and so on, and this is what we decide not to use clean for the carbon credits that are minted. There is, of course, since we are in the incentive mechanism design business, beyond data validation, how can buyers know that the carbon credits that they purchase are real? That's the whole question or requirement behind the dMRV or MRV. There is, of course, especially in the communities that you look at, in commons, you can say, where you have clear boundaries. You can also have a lot of play of incentives. In our case, the solar asset managers' reputation, these are repeat interactions, especially if YC protocol is useful for the solar asset manager and they want to fund projects in a rolling basis through the protocol. Right, the reputation of the asset manager will build up over time, and you can play with that. What are the perks of playing nice? The same way, if the protocol is worth protecting, right, instead of gaming it, then they will do so. Again, the environmental design of the solution and the community culture plays a lot into. What we also, again, are looking into when we say we're activists, right? Community engagement and activism, especially when we can also at some point include the users of the solar power, meaning the people underneath the roofs with whatever they're doing. Now with Paula, we're looking into sustainable fashion that starts with textile production that requires electricity, and what we have solar rooftops on them that are financed through Younergy Crypto. Now, how can we connect the whole value chain, and where do we play these incentives so they become also sources of validation because they're incentivized to make this protocol work? And then again, also big R&D is the dynamics of revenue sharing gains. And that's also one thing Younergy Crypto or Younergy and other solar asset managers later on, they are very active members, power users of YC protocol, right? So, and members, and we ask them to share the revenue back with the protocol, first to improve the protocol development, maintenance, but then also whatever is not needed for protocol improvements and maintenance, that goes back into every participant. And also the community then decides whether they want to have that distributed to YC token holders or fund more solar with the revenues. That is the whole token model. And it will evolve with participation. Okay, we are entering the last part, and as always, we're going to take much longer than the 1.5 hours. Likely this will go until 6, so if you have to leave soon, no worries, we keep the recording and share it with you. If you have a question or so that you want to share before you leave, I give you a minute to decide. Okay. If not, let's get into the last part of the ReFi module of Younergy Crypto School. The state of the art of cryptocarbon pools and protocols. I definitely share it with the intention of what can we learn from the experiences of the builders in the space and the trailblazers, and what is the potential, like what can we demand, where do we see improvements, where should this go to, like what are we going to demand from the ecosystem, but also what are we going to bring into this ecosystem. I think that's definitely the intention. Now, Toucan protocol and Klima, basically Klima, the token, and Klima DAO, the organization, those two were the ones that created an avalanche, likely also thanks to the hate of the crypto bull market in 2021. But Toucan was definitely the enabler of it all. Toucan protocol bridges the carbon value or carbon credits from off-chain registries like Vera to on-chain. And Toucan protocol was on Polygon first. Now they're on Celo. Definitely as a bridge, it brings its own or adds risk. We had that in Web3 basics about when we talked about Gnosis chain bridging or any L1 bridges, also Polygon bridges. Again, Toucan protocol has to create a bridge, and that's a typical way to go. But because it bridges from another registry to a DLT, I believe in this domain it's a bit more problematic, because the logic, like it's not smart contract security risk, but it's more on a coordination level that creates misaligned incentives. Have a look at that. So the chain itself, because again a DLT does a very good registry job, it's in direct competition to that off-chain registry, be it Vera, Gold Standard, whatever. So the chain eliminates intermediaries, right? So in this example of Younergy Crypto, you mint, you offset directly in your wallet using Gnosis chain, and nothing additional developed than exists. You use the YCo2 NFTs, that is the whole edition. And Gnosis chain keeps track in a robust, trustless, and cryptographically secured way, and creates this public record. Now, again, if you are Vera, then you will certainly want to make sure that your solution or your record is the master record, right? That's definitely such an obvious incentive misalignment or an issue, and also taking into account that the chain itself provides that innovation at zero marginal cost. It's clear that you cannot keep that up. The second issue is with, okay, which one is the master ledger, right? Again, if I was Vera or Gold Standard, if I'm connecting, then I would rather aim to become something like a centralized exchange of cryptocarbon, right? I would also use the registry, but would help with onboarding and so on, because that's what I know. But then again, there's then still the question, how about assets that are not in Vera? Again, the solar carbon value, Vera doesn't care about it, so it doesn't exist. So we have to bring that on chain somehow. The issue with Toucan protocol was and still is that they still just go with the Vera methodologies. Again, because Vera doesn't care about solar carbon value, we cannot use Toucan protocol. But the base carbon ton and the initial design thereof is it. Like, this is how, or this is the logic, how you can actually bridge carbon value. I just don't agree with that you need this coming from the carbon registries. Right? You have the project owners, developers, deployers. They create the value. They know exactly what it is that they're doing, and they could be using this carbon bridge directly. But again, the bridge works somehow only between an established registry and a chain. So, but how does it work? The bridge creates the TCO2s, the bridged carbon credits, and all of them have different attributes. Project A has different carbon value, project B has different carbon value, and they're not easily tradable. That's the issue of existing registries as well. Price finding is difficult. So what BCT did, or Toucan protocol did, was they created these pools, and from the pools you could create a base carbon ton. And the base carbon ton was a fractionalized and regrouped solution of, well, 1 carbon ton of those credits, but coming from different projects, and that's how you can put them in a fungible ERC20, and put that ERC20, which is then standard compatible, means also compatible with other DeFi protocols. You can have much deeper liquidity on DEXs and crypto carbon pools like Klima. And actually, with the instantiation thereof, that's exactly what has been proven. So definitely Klima has proven that there can be liquidity. Again, we can argue that they definitely did that in an imbalanced way and so on. But technically, the proof has been provided, and that's what opened the gates of innovation. However, what happened was that in Toucan, you have to, as a credit owner on or account owner on Vera, you are the person who's bridging, and you take care that whatever you're bridging is also permanently retired on Vera. And it turned out that the bridged carbon credits were the lowest quality. Then there was this narrative spinning of theory of change and saying, okay, we have to get rid of the low quality carbon credits, and that will increase the market value of carbon credits. And that's what we need. That's really what we need. But you can argue that this, let's sweep the floor, let's get rid of the low quality carbon credits was the way to go. Certainly, I mean, everyone now after the fact agrees that was not the way to go. But again, there was such a rush. At the end, Vera banned that greenwashing cryptos using retired credits, but you know, this whole banning crypto caused a lot of panic. But actually, there is this very clear point also that those low quality credits should never have been retirable within the Vera registry in the first place. Again, right? So we need to really point out what is the issue, what is the cause of the issue, and then, you know, either make that irrelevant or innovate and improve on that. So it's super, super important that we, you know, get rid of those narratives and PR articles, but actually figure out what is, what is stopping the innovation and what is the actual issue. Here, this slide is full of good links as well if you want to get into and learn about Web3, about protocols, how they are bootstrapped, what it means. You know, it's not just about getting a token out there, it's about then the community that coordinates, comes together around that tokenized value and needs to make decisions and so on and so forth. Domain-based decisions, technical decisions, and here again it's a bit of a history that shows that also BCT or Toucan had all these challenges to overcome, and they did. And these are the stories you learn from actually in Web3. We only learn from experiments. Why? Because it's a complex adaptive system involving human agents as well as smart contract agents, and on a global permissionless ledger. And again, I come from highly engineered closed systems, so that was a bit strange to me, and I never wanted to really buy into that. But after, you know, 2 years of DeFi and seeing all the danger, but as well as all the innovation, and also seeing no alternative way to actually generate that innovation and learning, and also generate that in such a fast way that we really need now in climate action. Yeah, that's the trade-offs that we're taking. That's why informed participation is super, super important for people who are creating the solutions. Enabling informed participation is important. And then this exchange, like really taking the community in and helping community coordination and community-led decision-making is really the best way to go. You know, it doesn't have to be innovation at neck break speed. I believe, especially, you know, there's also this insight that these protocols shouldn't change every 3 months, so that they are stable. And this is the way to go, definitely. But also, again, huge kudos to these innovators and pioneers who blazed the trail. Yes, Toucan has definitely a call for carbon market governance delegates as well. The goal that they are looking at is the same, reaching net zero by 2050. But then again, here's the link also that climate economists say that we need at least $100 per ton to create incentives to reach net zero, and need to have that now. Again, this is the big unsolved in crypto carbon protocols, whose assumption is that if we only trade fast enough, we will get the fair price. For now, at the very least, because the high quality carbon credits on chain are not commodity and available everywhere, actually nowhere. YCO2 is literally the only carbon credit on Gnosis chain that is native, meaning the creator of value is also the tokenizer and does this in an open source way. Open Forest Protocol, they are just bootstrapping right now, and they started already in 2021 on Near Protocol. Again, we're getting there, but certainly we're not at the level where commodities can be traded. So the best effort, or definitely one avenue that we need to look into, is also incentive mechanism design and creating these protocols and tokens, and based on those tokens then having pools and DeFi primitives. Money Legos also work with these regenerative monies. The ReFi summer and how crypto winter and Vera rained on it. It's just this beautiful timeline where you see there weren't many players who really pushed. Definitely there were players like Open Forest Protocol, a region network. They are much more older than the 2020s, actually, definitely reaching back to 2018, 2017. But it looked like 2022 was the ReFi spring, summer coming, and all of these macro events, including this whole Vera banning crypto issue, definitely rained on it. Nonetheless, let's look at a few other crypto carbon protocols, and then we will look into Klima, because that's currently the only pooling of those crypto carbons that are available right now, and I have not put any of them in yet. Right now, there are a few carbon markets in development, like Sencan and others. So definitely we will have a lot more content for season 2 of ReFi module. MCO2 is literally the world's first and most liquid carbon credit token. It's older than TCO2. It's the credits come from preservation projects in the Amazonas, but still only off-chain registries, to be correct, to be specific, from Bella, using the red plus standard, I think. But here, definitely recommend looking into the white paper. It's super interesting from the overview. The carbon credit token holders, nice distribution. You see a big chunk is actually being really traded on Coinbase, which is quite interesting. Polygon, Bridge, Gemini, so there are centralized exchanges, meaning likely these are really companies that have Web3 accounts there and that might be using it. Interesting, could be also just traders for sure, but you also have decentralized and non-custodial accounts. So super interesting. Over 3,000 token holders. Nice numbers. Again, I'm just looking at the numbers and talking at this stage, right? But then, as mentioned, because there was a lot of there was a big bang publication of critique with Vera's methodology for these nature-backed credits, and that caused, of course, a lot of issues again. And these players that only connected with the central registry have no other way, so that creates a lot of issues. Even when Moss, for example, they hired a top 20 US-based public accounting firm to produce reports of their reserves, meaning the token is really backed by carbon credits that use this methodology. It was good, right? One question I always had is like, okay, well, but it's a public accounting firm. Why don't we do it in a Web3 way, right? It would be more jobs for the Web3 ReFi community. But then, you know, within a couple of weeks, just recently, again, even that level of transparency won't be enough if the reserves methodology is disputed, which it was with this publication of studies and so on. Again, Vera says that the issues are well known, but still you have to fix those issues, else you know, else we're going to get stuck in this no man's land of there is value to be had, there are incentives to be had, but we haven't gotten there with traditional methods the past 20 years. And just connecting from crypto to those traditional methods, again, doesn't solve our problems. So MCO2 got delisted on Coinbase, at least on the EU side, as of March 8th. It's not clear, of course, exactly why, but definitely this whole dispute around Vera's Red Plus methodology definitely plays a role. Now, this is my personal opinion, but also after spending now 6 years in Web3 and crypto, and also myself really struggling with whether I agree or not with this ethos. And I always have my issues with traders and day traders, whether they really add value. But they do. Like we need to have this ecosystem thinking, and traders are information processors in this space. As long as we don't have full automation and AI processes there, that's really the value that traders add. They process information that is available everywhere, then which tips investigative journalists, then they create new information to be processed by traders, and that's how you find the fair value. And what we have found out now, that the current carbon credits that you can bridge from existing registries are not good enough. Well, we knew that. To the right, you see like all these links you can go into. So what the incumbents and this whole community say, like these issues were known, but they were known by insiders. So on crypto, we don't have that. The insiders out, everything is out in the public, on ledgers, transactions are on chain. You can analyze it anytime you want because the data doesn't get deleted and so on and so forth. So sometimes it's overly dramatic, but always useful. You know, and as time passes, we only get wiser, and discourse happens in public. Yeah, one saying is DYOR, do your own research. I think that's important. That's self-sovereignty, that's self-sovereign participation, informed participation. We need that, we have that, and also don't just trust, verify. Again, that too comes with crypto, and definitely all of this in a open source, globally connected way, as opposed to slow improvements behind closed doors with some councils and so on. It's just not comparable, the pace of innovation we have in Web3, and that's a good thing. Now, just quickly to Klima. Again, there's a lot more to say looking back, but then also looking about the potential of the underlying assumptions, and which of those assumptions turned out to be very wrong and so on. Super interesting case. Just some pointers for you, but also I have linked here to dig deeper. Klima is a fork of Ohm, and they have this, well, in Web3, we call it Ponzinomics. It's not a clear Ponzi scheme. It's this incentivizing early adopters and rewarding them much more than latecomers. And that's basically how you get rid of the chasm in this adoption curve of technology. But definitely, you know, both protocols deployed in the height of crypto market exuberance, height of bull market, and definitely was just too much. But again, there's always something to learn, and there's always a mechanism that survives and creates the next wave of innovation. And one very innovative Lego piece is this protocol-owned liquidity. Again, we will definitely go into that in our token model workshops. Here you can read up a little bit to get warmed up, but we will go through potential variations and whether, if and whether protocol-owned liquidity would make sense for the YC community. Coming from token engineering, definitely not into this. And also what we are tokenizing are clear, steady values coming from Solar. Data-driven, like there is not much you can hype, and certainly we will not. However, creating incentive schemes to overcome the bootstrapping, the initial and then the chasm and the adoption phases of innovation. These are really interesting things that we do look into in token engineering. The Cryptoeconomics, there is a nice walkthrough done by a token engineer, also in, they call Tokenomics DAO. They also create good sources. If you want to learn from them, definitely recommend. And the intrinsic value of Klima, again, is the base carbon ton or other CO2 tokens, credits. The protocol distributes any excess reserves in Klima, which is backed by carbon assets, to stakers. That's the whole rewards that was too high in the beginning and so on. And then the DAO gets the excess reserves distributed, or the DAO gets fees from bonding. Again, these are things that we briefly touched upon in Web3 Basics. You can read here an example of how these bonding, staking, and rebase mechanisms are applied. But then when we look into Klima, it's also important to decide and understand what it is and what it's not. Like their long-term goal is to create stable value that is dictated by market to have this reserve currency klima that is algorithms based and carbon backed, which is obviously much, much bigger than digital carbon markets. And that should be at the onset, becoming independent of the actual price of the carbon tons that it's backed by. Again, you'd need to dig much deeper into their reasoning. I have not found every sources yet, but the idea is super, super interesting. And short-term goal is super important because that's where it breaks or flies, right? One aspect was growth. That's what they tried to create, but the staking rewards. And the other one was the accumulation of intrinsic value, which they very well did. I mean, they put more than 20 million, I think, voluntary carbon credits on chain. But again, because it was from Vera, and Vera stopped that practice or banned it in the tumult of everything, that short-term goals, both the growth was not maybe too high in a too heated market, and the accumulation of intrinsic value could be just kept by one player saying no. So that definitely, you know, is just why it imploded internally. There are much more, definitely much more to it, but these are the things that you can see from when you just look at the mechanics. The large supply, again, yes, it is needed even in short term. That's why they created this super high staking rewards for early adopters and supply expansion. But there again, like what is the healthy development of that large supply? There is current ongoing research in the crypto Web3 or token engineering space as well. Again, here are my disclaimers. I'm not a klima holder. I'm just super into this carbon coin narrative. I'm fascinated, even if it had strange beginnings, and you know, they embrace this Ponzinomics as bootstrapping strategy, where, you know, definitely not my beer. And these links are freshly added, like there's more information coming and more learning to be had from that information, definitely. But as you see also, it literally crashed and burned. And certainly 99% of people who went in, they're still holding their klima if they didn't sell everything, panic sold. But the money that they put in, because of everyone is getting out, and also the crypto winter, Vera, all of that brought together that many people effectively today lost their money. And if you think about whether and how it would ever reach more than 3,200 USD per klima, you can imagine that can only happen if this becomes a global carbon-backed currency. That people choose as reserve currency. Like that's not a clean, that's not the price that would justify a carbon credit protocol. Again, super interesting. I definitely recommend the Ministry for the Future. The narrative story there is very carbon coin klima-like. Again, I can smile because I am not affected by this, but then when people are in these protocols or affected by them, it's really, really difficult. However, we know with the recent happenings, also with central banks trying to control a complex adaptive systems by the level of interest is equally reductionist, right? And equally dangerous, and becoming more and more dangerous the more we are connected globally. We see banks, you know, being shut down and like I believe the answer is, how are we going to use these technologies to cope with complexity more consciously, right? But again, going back to Younergy Crypto, solar rooftop, commercial and industrial buildings, and just handling the revenue shares and the carbon value of it is a much more handleable complexity than going for a global carbon coin. Let's look at what it does as a carbon pool. Okay, let's go back. Forget my fascination with the carbon coin. Let's look at what it is today and what it does. The Climate Treasury, you can look into it. It should be backed by carbon credits. It is backed by the BCT from Toucan Protocol still. What's really cool is this carbon.climatdao.finance. So that's something that they do really well. They offer everything, every data that is on chain, they offer in a dashboard. So you can really go into and understand what is happening and what is not happening and reason why. Okay, so MOS, the MCO2 token I mentioned before, is just 12% again, and a tiny, tiny fraction is C3. It's a new bridge that is bringing in, again, another universal basic offset, mostly renewables. I have not yet looked into, I will, but because it would affect, or it would be interesting for us, BCT, mostly renewables, again, that's the problematic one. But if all of them are just taking the methodologies from Vera, again, YCO2 has no connection there. The other thing, when we look into 1 ton of carbon here costs $1.31, and that's way below our target of $100 now. If that remains, or as long as that is the case, what we'd rather do is we'd share the carbon value for free with participants who are helping us, or who are participants in the community, and the community's goal is to put more solar on more rooftops. So again, because we believe individually, people are valuing a ton of CO2 much higher. I mean, if you can look at it yourself. You can, go to YC.finance and offset your flight and look at it. You will see for a flight you would pay maybe 20 or 42 XDAI, right? And that's where you understand, okay, this is actually the right value, because I know I'm polluting sitting there flying, sitting for 4 hours, and this flight is polluting and using kerosene and polluting the air. We, even if we're not traders, we know the value is much higher. And especially with YCO2, when you know the revenues from the carbon offsets are actually used to fund more solar, again, the incentive is very clear, especially if you can participate in that as well. Nonetheless, the carbon markets and carbon pools and carbon protocols is definitely interesting. There are webinars that ClimateDAO also offers, which are good content. And there's also a digital carbon market overview that they shared. From the information side, definitely very, very good quality that they're providing now. So we're coming almost to the end. The YCO2 NFTs, again, we just started. You can become the 16th holder. So it is on Gnosis chain, and it is the first and only carbon credits from solar on chain, or on Gnosis chain anyways. The reason why we chose Gnosis chain is because it is proof of stake like Ethereum now as well, and the number of validators is only second to Ethereum. That's really good. Currently, it is mint to offset, so we only are speaking to people who value the offset value of carbon credits and not necessarily they want to trade it. We offer, or we are drawing value aligned holders who value the carbon ton at approximately $100 or XDAI. And also because they know the revenues go to R&D, the protocol, and to deploy more solar. And we wanted to become led by this community who buys in with this limited edition YCo2s. Why? Because there are many things that we need to decide, and we want to decide collectively, so we own it also together. Here are just some questions, again, in the community calls. These will be ongoing topics and decisions, as well as in discourse. And the community that we are cultivating, number one, our goal is to fund more solar to go greener and regenerate. At some point, these are energy and blockchain veterans, designers, developers, engineers, as well as data artists and scientists, Web3 natives who learn about solar and ReFi maybe just now or through us, as well as Web3 learners, which are the solar heroes we are dealing with day to day. So again, in the token model workshops, we have interesting revenue-based rewards model for this YC token, YCo2 token, and you can join the token model workshops to also influence that in the future. Now, a quick excursion to the crypto economics of carbon. So now that we have tokenized value of solar carbon as well, we have tokenized value of the revenues, which we share in XDAI. What is it that we can create using the smart contracts and compose them? So what could be the benefit from incentive schemes? Again, just briefly here, that will be definitely one or one of many sessions that we will go into, is the questions like the CO2 emissions of a solar panel life cycle. They are really small, 1473 grams, again, a kilowatt hour. If it replaces at minimum 170 grams CO2 per kilowatt hour, you can say it, it offsets itself. Solar is today the cheapest and safest source of electricity, but there are actually many things that we are currently doing that can even optimize or improve that CO2 emission. Also, the environmental impact that we only use rooftops is a decision, right? We're not using green places and green areas for to put solar on. Then energy efficient use of solar power, like other partners in the ecosystem, are going to increase the value add that Younergy Crypto can have with tokens. And the two other parts is really the renewable energy, sustainable materials, the circular economics of the not just putting solar panels on the rooftops, but then also in 20, 30 years, replacing them. And that is also super interesting when we think about token ecosystems and incentivizing circular economies there. All in all, we can say that we know 91% of global CO2 emissions come from fossil fuels and industry. So putting solar on commercial and industrial rooftops effectively is a way to avoid CO2, and that's what the community aims at, right? But what about additionality? Again, high quality carbon credits have this feature of additionality, meaning if you offset using a high quality carbon credit, you can rest assured that the revenues from your offset go into additional, right, or create additional sources of CO2 avoidance or reductions, in our case, more solar rooftops. Now, that is wonderfully done through a DeFi concept of smart contract composability. Tracing offsets, revenues, and additionality on-chain becomes possible. Here, this is what I mentioned, existing projects. We can use the carbon value of them using the YCO2 NFT smart contracts that people can mint to offset. So that's what they value. With the revenues that go into the YC governance multisig, we can definitely fund the continuance R&D of the protocol, maintenance of the protocol, and whatever is not needed goes into funding more solars through the YC token smart contract. And that we can retrospectively create rewards with by airdropping those additional YC tokens that we minted or that we bought through the revenues from the offsets back to initial offsetters. So that's quite interesting. You could also directly buy into YC token, but this way definitely proves the additionality of the existing carbon credits that we're selling. And the funds that come through YC token, they go directly into funding more solar and through solar asset managers, and the solar asset managers participate as members. That means they use the protocol. That means they also commit to sharing 50% of their revenues. Now that revenue share, again, has quite some game theory in it, but it's also the game theoretic proof that we are using and creating additionality, that we're using the funds that we get through the whole protocol to fund more solar and help everyone who makes that possible participate in that through the YC token. There will be just a session just on these, but I'm just providing a teaser here. Again, with this, I hope if you have any questions, if you have concrete questions about YC Finance, you will find links here. Also, feel welcome to join the discourse, to pose those questions, definitely, even on Twitter or so. Definitely, you know, start using, and if you have questions, definitely you will find answers from us. If you want to support and join the YC community, continue learning, again, this participation and using the protocol is what creates the usage-based governance and the reward mechanisms. You can mint YCO2 credits to offset your unavoidable flights. Even as individuals, you have a way to participate in YC token. And if you want to participate directly into funding more solar using YC, sign up if you're interested, and you will get notified with the YC token sale. Yeah, Paula had to leave a bit early today, but definitely we are also looking into specific sectors. You know, for us individuals, offsetting our flights is interesting, but also, you know, the second largest, or no, sorry, the largest carbon footprint comes actually from, yeah, what we are wearing, like the fashion industry. Textile industry is quite a huge consumer, and compared to flight or transport, maritime transport, fashion industry has even more, a bigger carbon footprint, which we're supporting. If you don't look, like, for example, if you don't ask whether the t-shirts have been created using solar energy, right? That's where it starts. Again, we're looking into these partnerships and into creating incentive mechanisms within the value creation network, where solar energy is at the beginning of everything. So I hope you enjoyed and you learned. I am going to stop sharing and stop the recording.